theyeshiva.net.
Okay, it's page Nun Beis. The line starts Mebchinas Chitzonius Shenasa Makal Olamas Ubir Ha'inyan. 17 lines from the top. Ubir Ha'inyan. The explanation in what? The explanation in the entire point, the Nekuda, the summation that has been brought out and that we have been exploring is how to understand what we call in Teres Hanister, Seder Hishtalshalus, the whole evolution of all the worlds, from the highest to the lowest, to the most physical and mundane and brute world, which is called Olam Hasiya, to be able to really appreciate how to and to understand Shem Havaya and Shem Elikim and Havaya Hu Helikim and the Tzimtzum and the Hester and the Helam. And the ultimate conclusion that just as Koyim Inish Adaita de Rabbe, after 40 years, as the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah in the beginning of Daf, ultimately the ideas conveyed here teach that everyone, Kol Echad Vechad, as he puts it, can unravel and in a process called Ar Chayzer, journey back upward, if you wish, or inward, probably be better word, inward, upward, really the same thing, and discover in every facet of their existence, which at first glance, and even at second glance, and even at third glance, is completely defined by concealment, because without concealment, there would be no I, there would be no identity, but nonetheless, that is only really a channel for revelation, and not only that, a channel to get to the ultimate core of truth. To be able to explain this, how does one reach this process? What are the tools for this? Till now, it's more hashkafic, it's perspective, explanations, biurim, mishalim, the big mashal of the teacher and the student. What are the tools? What is the mechanism for this? So we first have to give an introduction, which seems like a completely different topic, talking about Tzimtzum and Helim and Havaya and Elikim and Iris and Kalim and a mashal and a teacher and a Helim, to explain to discuss the concept of Nisyonis, which means tests. V'hu mashakasuv, and this is what the pasuk says. Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people in the last weeks of his life, Ki menasa Hashem Elokeichem eschem ladas. Hayishchem oyavim es Hashem b'chol avavchem u'b'chol nafshechem is the whole pasuk. Moshe Rabbeinu speaks there about a Navi who is a false prophet who comes and really tries to derail the Jewish people. And he says, don't listen. And you have to know that sometimes Ki menasa Hashem Elokeichem eschem. God, Hashem, Havaya, his words is Havaya, Yud Kevavke, Ki menasa Havaya Elokeichem eschem, is testing you. That's one classic pasuk that says that there's a concept in life called menasa, from the word nisui nisaya. Or as we say every morning, Vahi acher advarim me'elav Elikim nisa es Avraham, from the word test. Shemenasa mesa'adam em yamad b'nisaya. One is often tested if they're going to stand through an nisayim. V'tzarich lahavin ma'u hakavana halyona ba'nisaynos. What is the real objective? What is the divine purpose in life's nisyonis? And everyone knows life brings about nisyonis of one form or another form. Big ones, small ones. Sometimes in one's mind they're very big, even though relative to somebody else's may be small. But it's not about comparisons, it's really about understanding what's the kavanah elyon in nisyonis. What's the purpose of it? What's the objective of it? In another place, elsewhere, in Sfarim of Chassidus, it's explained a very daring, a very audacious, a very intense insight. The kol tachlis yiridus haneshama beguf, that the entire purpose of the soul coming into the body, shehi yirida gedola, which is a tremendous descent. It's not a small yirida. The harei koidem yiridasa beguf haysay medes ba'olam elyon began eden atachne began eden elyon. Before the neshama went into the body, came down It existed. It stood in a higher world. Sometimes we call it Gan Eden HaTachton, a lower level of Gan Eden. Sometimes Gan Eden Elyon. Ki yadua me'inyan ma'ayin basa. As it's explained in Svarim, in the explanation of the words of the Mishnah, da, you should know me'ayin basa. La'ana tohoylech v'lefnei mi'at hasid litin din v'cheshben. And it's explained, me'ayin is not just a question, me'ayin from where, but it's also a statement. Me'ayin basa, you come from a place called ayin. How can we call this place ayin if it's a place it's not ayin? And the answer is, it's so beyond our tangible conception that we call it ayin. Just like the Ramban calls creation yesh me'ayin, and it's a very famous lashon in Svarim of Chira and Machshava and Kabbalah and Chassidus and Hashkafa, that the Bria is yesh me'ayin. Yesh me'ayin is the famous expression the Ramban says, Bereshis bara, that in Lashon Kodesh, the word, on the first pasuk of Torah, the word bara means something from nothing, or as our Latin friends like to say, ex nihilo, something from ayin. So why would you call it ayin? If it's yesh, I understand it's yesh, but why may ayin? Why from nothing? Bereshis bara elikim es hashamayim v'saretz. Why would you attribute to him the word ayin, which means nothing? Absolutely nothing. One of the explanations is that from the Yesh's perspective, the source is ayin, because we don't have the tools to be able to grasp it as a reality. Sometimes that which is completely beyond us we call nothing, not because it exists less, because it actually exists more. It exists in such a powerful way that our tools, which are limited, can't capture it. So when we look at it, we say, okay, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. You know, sometimes you could be, if you hear some of the greatest secrets, but you don't have the kelim to pick it up, you just dismiss it. It's nothing. What does the Gemara say? Nitna levu l'shaitim l'tinoikis, right? From mipi oilim v'yoinkim, from the mouths of babes, of children. They could sometimes tell you the deepest things, but it's without fanfare, it's without drama, because they themselves don't understand what they're saying. So it doesn't occupy so much space. So often, something is so powerful, but we don't have the tools to access it. So therefore, in our world, we call it ayin, nothingness. To give a simple example, which is brought in Svarim, and that is, if you're going to explain to you're building a sukkah, and you're going to explain to the nails that there's a mitzvah b'sukkahs teish for shiva sem, and therefore the nails should, on their own, enter into the walls and do their job to fulfill God's mitzvah. Isn't that a much more powerful way to persuade somebody than to take a hammer and knock him over the head? Persuasion and inspiration is much deeper. There's a famous Yiddish expression, a patch vergeht und a Wort besteht. A patch vergeht. You know what a patch is? A patch vergeht. It passes. It balances off, especially if you're used to getting it. Those of you who had the schuz, no, you get used to it. Next. Okay, let's finish. Get it over with. Skillas, Reifa, Herik, Chenek, Dalet, Mrs. Malkus, etc. A word bashtet. A word, an insight. It penetrates. It permeates. Right? They used to. What was that song? Sticks and stones won't break.
Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never harm me.
Right. As we know, that's the opposite of truth. Right? They used to sing that sticks and stones will break my bones, but words can't harm me. Sometimes it's the exact opposite. You know, you speak to children who have been bullied. Words are very powerful. Huh? Kiba apam, yeah. A krim von der nose, yeah? A krim von der nose. Kiba apam hargoish. Ubertsoinam ikru shoy. Yaakov Avinu says. Words are very powerful. The Mishnah says, Basar Maamaris nivra ha'olam. The world was created through 10 Maamaris, through words, and part of the messages, it can also be destroyed through words and built through words. Words are very powerful. So l'cha'ira, knocking somebody with a hammer over the head and say, do it, seems very impressive. But it's much more superficial than if you can explain, because if you can explain, it's an eternal impact. If you do it through a hammer, it's coercion. As Rashi has the expression, Shetahei shal heves oila me'eleh. So l'cha'ira, why don't you speak to the nail and explain to the nail that the sukkah is coming? And the answer is, you could stand in front of the hammer and the nail for 3 hours and lecture eloquently, and somehow they will be unmoved. Why? And the answer is because in the world of the nail, words, ideas are ayin. For a bar seichel, for somebody who can detect intelligence and is sensitive, it's more powerful than anything else. It's much more powerful than a hammer. And you have to know what you're dealing with. So when you're dealing with a nail, you got to use a hammer. But when you're dealing with a mind, you got to use words. But in the world of the hammer, this is ayin, even though it's more powerful really than anything else. That's why we call it ayin. Ayin means, in my realm, it's nothing. It's meaningless. I have no relationship to it. Sometimes when truth is above me, all I can say is ayin. That's why it's called deshman. That's da me ayin basa. The neshama comes from a place that we call ayin, which means its entire existence operates on such a deep level that unless you open yourself up to it, you'll say it's nothing, it doesn't exist. You may not even recognize its existence. That's how deep it is. That's what the neshama really is, me'ayin bas. And yet, and further, it comprehended godliness, meaning godliness was reality. It stood with love and awe, complete oneness, alignment with godliness. The expression in the Tanakh is Chai Hashem Asher Amadati Lefonav. The Amida Lemaila Shein Shayach Sham Amida V'Yeshiva B'chinas Bittel. Whenever it says Amida, and we speak about spiritual terms where there's no physical sitting and standing, Amida means complete alignment. V'yarda nonetheless, V'yarda B'Seisra Madrega. The neshama descended. The Seisra Madrega means through many, many secret levels, in a very complicated, intricate level, descend, all the way into this world. Here it becomes remote from the divine light. There's no way the neshama in the body can detect and comprehend godliness the way it did above. As the Maamar has been explaining, the divine energy, the way it even comes in and shines in the lowest worlds, is with the epitome of tzimtzum, of restriction, with tremendous concealment, a ray which is external. As we explained, it's like the Rav who presents a ray, a little glimmer of a glimmer. There's a light, there's the ray of the sun, and then there's the ray of the ray. You make a copy of something, and then there's the copy of the copy, and then there's the copy of the copy of the copy, and then there's thousands of copies down the line where there's still a trace of the original, but obviously the mashal is not a very good mashal. But the concept is you have a light and a ha'ara, and then the ha'ara of a ha'ara, and the ha'ara of a ha'ara of a ha'ara. So it's all chitzon. And even this light, comes in a very concrete and materialized way. In this world, all hasagas is called hasaga megushemes. Hasaga megushemes means a material way of comprehending things, a certain it's a certain limited way. Everything is concretized. Everything is expressed in terms of akshama, of materialization. There's a certain grabkeit, there's a certain lack of inner deep sensitivity that one could comprehend in this world. You can't even compare it at all to the way the soul detected and sensed spiritual divine energy in a higher place before it was encumbered by the environment, the reality of the body and of the world. You can't even compare the two. What we mean to say is that there's two major differences. Number one, first of all, in the Olam Ha'elyon, in the higher world, the divine energy shines in much more revelation, a higher light that is revealed. And number two, and furthermore, and it doesn't come out in a material, concrete, limited way, but more pristine, spiritual way. Therefore, you completely can't compare even a neshama that experiences love and awe here to the love and awe there, because it's a completely different type of ava. V'oidzos, what is more, sheyard aliyas b'pchinas hestepanim, that there's bichlal concealment here. V'hei ma'alemes v'estadim shemalimim u'mastidim al eir Hashem u'kedushosai v'tzarich li'ageya harbe atshav l'eir eliki. There's tremendous concealments that conceal completely the light of Hashem and the kedusha, and you have to work very hard to discover it. So it's two differences. First of all, even if there wouldn't be a helam, there's a tzimtzum. Point number one is tzimtzum. Point number two is helam. The mashal for the first is the teacher who gives a limited degree of the information. The mashal for the second thing is that even what he gives is completely dressed up in stories and anecdotes and mashal. So even the first one is enough to create a complete metamorphosis in the neshama, because the level of intensity of ruchni is the way it comes into this world is infinitely inferior in terms of quantity and quality to the higher worlds. This similar to the difference between the teacher communicating to himself, or communicating to a colleague, or communicating to somebody who's more or less on the level, and then bringing it down level after level after level after level. It would be like the light comes into a room, and then there's a thick curtain that blocks the light from coming into the next room, and only a little bit goes through the curtain. And then there's another curtain, what we call a parsa, that blocks the light from coming into the next room. And then you have 1,000 rooms later. How much light is it getting? It's getting light, but it's getting a little trickle of light, a little tiny aura, because if it would get more, it would be blinding. So the fact that we're living in this world, every world is a descent of oir, madrega after madrega, to the ultimate tzimtzum and restriction of the oir, where one can only have a ha'ara. So as a result of that, the entire consciousness of the neshama, you can't compare. The consciousness in a higher plane is infinitely greater. That's the uniqueness. The moment the neshama leaves the body, the way it sees reality is completely transformed, because the layers of consciousness are completely on a different level in this world than already in the world above it, and the world above it, but that's only step one. Step two is that the light doesn't even reach here. Even the light that reaches is extremely concealed. But the light doesn't even reach. This world is a world of blockages. You don't even know that there's light. The teacher at least may be giving a shiur. He may be giving only a fraction of what he has to say. But he's giving a fraction. At least you're getting something. But what happens if you don't even know he exists in the room? Or what happens if it's all dressed up in Mishalm, you just think it's a nice story, there's nothing else. And you don't even know that he's here. That's a second product in this world. In addition to tzimtzum, there's also complete helam, hester, concealment. That's the two things that he says. First of all, the whole hasaga here of Elikus is megushim. The way we speak about it is megushim. Megushim means it's grub. Spirituality in our world, relative to pristine spirituality, is very coarse. It's a coarse way of getting it. Why? Because we're forced to grasp it through our tools. That's number one. Number two, sometimes there's no oil, there's only darkness. One doesn't even know that there's light in them. One may not even feel the kedusha in them. One may not even be sensitive to any divine energy in them or in anybody else. And it takes tremendous yigiyah to even access it. It's covered up by layers and layers. Not only is the light restricted, and a little bit of it comes through, but the whole entity can be completely eclipsed. Those are the two major impacts that the neshama goes through as a result of entering into this world, entering into the domain. It says in Svarim, in the Arizal and others, why it takes 9, why Hashem made biologically that pregnancy is 9 months, it's a whole process. Each month is really a journey of the soul into a lower space until it can emerge into the world. And when the baby does emerge into the world, it cries for a while. So on one level it's because of oxygen, but there's also deeper reasons, it says in Zohar. So this is a quantum leap, and in many ways a traumatic event for the soul who comes from the world of ayin and now one day enters into a new reality. And much of the tension of life, even though we're not conscious of it, is the tension between the soul pre-birth and the soul post-birth. Da me ayin basa, the quantum leap from a place of ayin into a place of yesh, with all that entails for the soul. Now, because we're already here, we're learning about this, like we often can't even, what are you talking about? Not my soul, maybe you're talking about somebody else's soul. My soul doesn't have any of these issues. But that's only because the soul actually went through this, and I may not relate to that state of consciousness. All this describes a tremendous yirida, a tremendous descent. Hine, so it says that tachlis kavanas yiridasa hu b'shvil hanisyonos. So in some places it says that the whole tachlis, the whole objective of this yirida was the concept of nisyonos. Shaboyim la'adam, which come to a person. We asked before, what is the objective of nisyonos? And in us, and he started to say that in some places it says that the whole purpose of the neshama coming into the guf, which is a tremendous yirida, is for nisyonos. Which means that there's something very, very powerful in these nisyonos. What does this mean? So he says, Shaboyim la'adam, they come to a person. Shehem b'chinas hester pona. All nisyonos are basically reflecting concealment. All they're revealing is hester ponim, the hiding of the face. K'moi b'istalkus chayis hashefa. A nisayon basically means something is being removed. Some life, some hashpah, some flow that a person needs, that a person wants, is being challenged. It's being encumbered. You think about the nisayonos that a person has in life, whether they're physical or emotional or spiritual. They're inside of you or they're outside of you. They come from the past, they come from the present. Whatever it is, whatever type of nisayon, but the common denominator is it's always a hester ponim. There's a stumbling block. There's a boulder in my life. There's something blocking. There's something concealing. There's histalkus chiyus hashefa. The life force, the hashpah, departs. B'miniyas briyas haguf. Sometimes it's a nisayon in health. Person is struggling with their health or somebody who's their loved one's health. That's a very serious nisayon. It disrupts a whole life. There's no need to elaborate on this, but anybody who's been through such a situation knows how it just, a life is going in a particular direction, and then one bright morning, a curveball just derails everything. One discovers a whole new reality in terms of health, a health challenge. On a different level, but it's also a big nisayon. Financial duress. Again, for people who don't experience it, they don't know what it is. But somebody who doesn't know how they're going to buy a new pair of shoes for their children, or pay the month's rent, or even buy fish for Shabbos, and it's ongoing, it's the stress of it. It's not just the lack of money, it's what comes with the lack of money. Somebody once told me, he says, I have my own Yomim Tovim. I said, when? He says, whenever the bank is closed. He says, when the bank is closed, says, for me it's a real Yom de Pagras, it's called, a real Yom Tif. That's my Yom Tif. I know till the next morning, Aloy Sashachar, can schlafen. Okay. Miniyas Maamar means financial duress. And all of this ultimately, how he describes it is, lahastir kidei lahastir al oir v'chayis Hashem u'kedushasa. All these nisyonos, it's not just physical challenges. They all block the light of God. They cover the oir of the chiyus of Hashem and the kedusha. One doesn't feel one doesn't feel godliness here. One doesn't feel holiness here. One does not feel sublimated here. All one feels is blackness, darkness, stress. And this is the real stress and anxiety of life that people deal with. He just gave two examples, but of course, as we all know, the examples are quite elaborate. They constitute a meniya, prevention, either mibayis, inside, or mibachutz, outside. L'misha bol is skariv l'Hashem, ba'avoidosoi b'tfilah v'torah. For anybody who wants to come close through avodah, whether it's davening or learning chuli or anything else, mitzvahs, etc. Bayis mibachutz means that there's two types of nisyonos. There's a moineya, something that prevents you mibayis internally, and mibachutz externally, like meniyas mammon is something outside. A person can't get parnasa, a person can't pay their bills, a person can't find a job, a person can't find the right job. whatever it is, or it's not enough, even if they have a good job. So that's mibachutz. It's the telephone calls that come in, it's the texts, it's the emails, it's the WhatsApps, it's the bills that come in the mail. That's one type of miniyah. And then the miniyah mibayis. The miniyah mibayis is internal stuff. That could be like physical stuff, like you said, health, or other ideas, which is what we would call psychological anxiety, emotional anxiety, trauma, pain, agony, suffering, internal challenges that a person has. On the outside, nobody may even know it. Right? Person suffers with mental illness, for example, or similar challenges. These are things that nobody knows. It's not like physical health that people see and they can empathize and there's right away, people collect. Sometimes people have such inner turmoil and struggle. On the outside, nobody knows. They themselves may not even know exactly why they're suffering, with themselves or their children. These are big nisyonos in life. And very often people don't even have who to talk about it with because there's so many stigmas. And you're not allowed to talk about this, and you're going to compromise the dignity of your family and the name of your family, which only doesn't take away the nisayon, it doesn't repress it, it only quadruples it. Because at least if I could speak about it, there could be some opening, some ear you could breathe. A person now has to keep it all inside. You sometimes see a situation that inside they erode, they implode instead of explode. So these are all real hastadim, real blockages that cover completely up the light of life, the chiyus of life. Person wants to get close to Hashem, how could he? There's so much pain and so much stress, doesn't even know where to begin.
It doesn't include here regular temptations, it doesn't.
Regular temptations are not called nisyonos. We'll soon see. That's part of the system. The regular temptations that we have, that's not called a nisayon.
So nisayon is not a test, it's a challenge. The test is you have to know the right answer.
Yes. We call it a test, but it's not really an exam. Yeah. It could be. You could call it Yisurim Shalava, but it's still Yisurim. Yeah.
The holding back or the R is a positive challenge, or the challenge is quadruple because there's no R. What's the?
It's probably both. Probably yesh v'yesh.
I mean, the fact that the person that has financial difficulties is what? Because they have there's a lack of R in their bank account. Is that how it?
There's no external account.
It's shefa of money. The money is a.
I wouldn't put it that way, but just to put it in simple words, every type of nisayon represents a certain obstruction in hashpah. A certain obstruction in hashpah, a certain chiyus, a certain flow that either gets compromised or seizes chas v'shalom, or gets diluted or gets derailed, etc. The lottery, I was supposed to win the lottery, he did, so it got derailed.
So that's what he's saying, he got the R.
Yeah, but that's not a nisayon that he didn't win the lottery. I'm just saying, every nisayon basically represents an obstruction in the flow, in the flow of life. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be spiritual.
There's nothing in the R that causes the R to be lost.
Okay, fine.
Question, is there an interactive relationship, like under the expression, let's think good and it will be good, so that if a person focuses on the sign or a challenge, he can somehow intensify it, whereas if a person accepts it, doesn't deny it, but recognizes that it is a good, that somehow mitigates it?
That's a beautiful idea. There's a famous expression from the Tzemach Tzedek, I think it comes, tracht gut wird sein gut. The way we think about reality affects reality. We'll see more of that soon. But that's a very fundamental idea. Our approach to it really has much to do with how we deal with it and what the results are. Yeah?
I didn't understand what he said with regular temptations, and must be clear here. I don't know what he means.
He wants to know why he's mentioning health and money. Why doesn't he mention every day he presses snooze on his alarm clock? So those are from the small temptations. In other words, there's the daily human condition that we deal with. But sometimes there could be a nisayon morality. For example, what Yosef went through with Eishes Potifar is called a nisayon. Because, he was put in a place with a tremendous test. It wasn't just every person has to choose constantly, right? There are situations, circumstances where you face a real big nisayon morally as well. But those are unique circumstances.
Going to sleep on time, to be alert and sitting here and understanding, that's not an insight.
You're saying it is a nisayon. Everything is a nisayon.
And so starts at night. Simple time. Yes.
Rabbi, I heard along these lines, I'm sure everybody did, different stories of people that had like the Rabbi was saying, an inner challenge that was going on, a worry or something, and someone gave them a good word or did something good for them, and it changed them around like that. It brought them,
Yeah. V'sheyamad b'nisayon neged kol minei ma'akev, that a person stands up with this, a person withstands the nisayon, the test, against, contrary to every preventer. B'shvil zeh hayatachlus hayedidah shel haneshama. This was the purpose of the descent of the soul. That means that the power of dealing with a nisayon is so profound, it's so impactful, that it was worth for the neshama to come down. And what does it mean to come down? It's not just you're going down a roller coaster. That's a dramatic drop. What do they call it over there? Those free falls where you have a drop. But you're dealing here now with a drop not of 100 feet and not of 400 feet or 1,000 feet, but a drop through all of these worlds. It was worthwhile to be able to give the person the opportunity to stand up to all of his tests and challenges. Because of the Gilui Oir Elyon, the tremendous light and closeness through it. But this has to be understood. Why would this be the tachlis of the neshama? Because you say that through this, one reaches the ultimate oir, the ultimate light, the ultimate closeness. Why? It's an impressive thing, it's an important thing. But as the Gemara has an expression, don't give me your bite and don't give me your honey. Don't give me your nisyonis and don't give me your light.
What does it mean to withstand? Accept that you're being suffering?
That's a good question. What does it mean to withstand the nisayon?
The right focus, please.
To not give up on the art.
So if somebody has Belias mom, say let the checks down, what withstand? How do you stand up to that?
A Yid once asked his friend, what's Pshat we say in Novolotzian? Umekablin dain min dain v'omrin kaddish. Yeah, what does it mean? So he said, I'll tell you, I do it every day, he says. I take a loan from one person, yeah? Then I have to pay back. I don't know how to pay back, because I take from somebody else. Yeah. Then I have to pay him back, so I take from somebody else. And so I go to everybody, he says, Umekablin dain min dain. I accept from this one, from that one, that one. For Amrin Kaddish, somebody's going to say Kaddish on the money. I don't know who's going to say Kaddish on the money, but somebody's going to say Kaddish on the money. Or at one point, I just tell both of them, I say, listen, I anyway don't have money. Why don't you fight it out between yourselves? I'm taking from you and giving to you. Okay. I don't think that's called. They say a Mai said that there was once a Yid who came to his friend. It was Erev Yom Kippur in the morning. And he says, $75,000 5 years ago. You have to pay me. Maamar, such gneva, such sheker, what you did to me, you never paid me back. So he says, who are you? He says, what do you mean, who are me? I gave you money, you took it, you said you're going to pay back. So he says, I'm going to check in my bichala. They used to have, I don't know if you ever see, but probably some of you had it, or your father certainly had it, little books with diaries, and you put everything in. The iPhone destroyed it all. But there was the little books, and they would write in, and all the most important information of life, including the black box. Everybody's atomic energy was in that book. So he takes out his book, and he starts looking, over all the money, and he says, yeah, besgerecht. Besgerecht, I borrowed a lot of money from you 5 years ago. He says, you see, you shakrin, you ganav, you gazlan, you lowlife, you were disappearing, and this, now you see you're right. He says, listen. If you continue to scream, from the bichala. If you continue to scream, I'm going to erase you. I'm going to erase you from the book. If you want me to keep you in the book, stop screaming. There is, of course, he's not. You don't need the Maamar to tell you that if a person has a health issue, they have to go to an expert. It's a pasuk. V'rapa yirapa, as Chazal say, mikan shenitnu rishus l'roifel l'rapas. And as you know, there are shittas in the East. The Mefarshim bring it, Even Ezra brings it, that held you're not allowed to go to doctors. They said, if God wants somebody to be ill, why are you mixing it? So Gemara in Baba Basra, Turnusrufus, the governor of Rome, told Rabbi Akiva, if Hashem made somebody poor, why are you giving him tzedakah? Why are you rebelling against God? God wants him to be sick. God wants him to be poor. That's what he told Rabbi Akiva. He said the whole concept of tzedakah means there's no faith. You don't believe that God runs the world. You don't believe God wants him to be poor. Person stands up, person is sick. God wants it. What are you mixing it? But the Torah holds otherwise. V'rapa yirapa. So that's a davar pashut, an obvious thing that every person, according to their capacity, and even beyond their capacity, beyond their perceived capacity, ought to always try to do in their life whatever they can do to eliminate the obstacles, the challenges, the difficulties, the pain, the stress of anxiety. Whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual, whether it's mental, of course, whether it's health related. And and sometimes that means being very creative. It means opening yourself up to new opportunities. It means thinking out of your own box, right? It means consulting people that you may have never consulted before. It means consulting yourself in a way that you may have never consulted before. It means working through a lot of stuff. That's a given. That's a given. In other words, we are not told turn your other cheek and take another smack. God wants partners, not obedient robots. Partners means, yes, as Rabbi Akiva told him. He said, how do you make bread? You take stalks of wheat, right, and you remove the chaff, and you grind the kernel, and you turn it into flour, and you turn the flour, and you knead it with water, and you bake bread. Where do you have the chutzpah to start manipulating creation? And the answer is creation was created for you to be a partner. Shutaf l'kadosh baruch hashabara lekim lasois l'sakein, says the Medrash. There's a partnership in creation. The creation has an author, and the author wants a co-author. And the co-author, together with the original author, perfects the world. And that's why we build hospitals. And we build spiritual hospitals. And we build places where growth and transformation are possible on every level. That's a davar pashut. But that's a yisoid in Yiddishkeit, right? Pikuach nefesh, doiche kol ha-Torah kula, and you're mechalel Shabbos and Yom Kippur, and the Kohen Gadol in Kodesh HaKadoshim, doing the Ketores on the holiest day, if he hears that there's a baby who's in danger, right, and he happens to be in Hatzalah, the Kohen Gadol, so there's a chiyuv for him to throw down the Ketores, even though the whole world is based on this avodah. It's Kodesh HaKadoshim. He has to take the Ketores and throw it down, and take the blood and throw it down and run out and get into the ambulance, and drive to save this child. It's Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's Yom Kippur, it's a Kohen Gadol, it's a whole Klaisel, and it is a baby, or some old person who already lived their life, and they're suffering anyway from dementia. But if the Kohen Gadol stays in Kodesh HaKadoshim, he's called a Ritzeyach. As the Shulchan Aruch says, I raise a Shoifech Damim. That's the doctrine, that's the theology that has guided Jews for thousands of years. That's the Yesodus of Torah. V'chai behem, v'loi sheyamos behem. Nobody says somebody is suffering. That's what God wants. Reb Moshe Leib Sossever was once asked, everything has a source in Kedusha. What's the source of atheism in Kedusha? What's the source of apikursis in Kedusha? And he answered, when it comes to helping somebody else, somebody says, I have a problem. So you say, Evet helfen. That's why there's a big God. Why don't you daven? He'll help you. So he says, here, you got to be like an atheist. Here, what God does, let what God will do. He'll figure it out. What you have to do is, I can help, I have to help. I can say, well, I run this world, I decided this, it's Hashgacha Pratis. You got to mix into Hashgacha Pratis. So this is where apikursis becomes a very holy trait. And emunah becomes a toxic trait. There's times to give it over to God, and there's times to say, this is my calling right now. Moshe Rabbeinu could have also gone out and see an Egyptian beating a Jew and give a krech to say, let's go say Tehillim. Galus Mitzrayim was a gzeira, it's my fault. And then two people hitting each other, and then women being all these things. The first Jewish leader should have said Hashgacha Pratis, like we always say Hashgacha Pratis. Yeah. I met somebody the other day. He says it's Hashgacha Pratis. I meet you. I have to talk to you for half an hour. It's Hashgacha Pratis. So I told him I'm sorry. I would love to, but I shouldn't have an urgent thing I have to go to. He says, but it's Hashgacha Pratis that I meet you. I told him after I leave, it's going to be Hashgacha Pratis that I left too. It's also going to be Hashgacha Pratis. Right? Hashgacha Pratis is not when you choose Hashgacha Pratis, becomes Hashgacha Pratis. Somebody else, it's not Hashgacha Pratis anymore. It fits into my schedule, became Hashgacha Pratis. Maybe Hashgacha Pratis is also on the other person. Hashgacha Pratis. Right? So Hashgacha Pratis is not a game. So the Rosh Leib Sasaveh says at this point you have to assume responsibility. And that's a very, very important yisoid. Probably needless to say, but it's always good to emphasize. What we're doing here is we're going to the next step. We're going to the next step. The next step, as we will be exploring the side gate, the next step, minus Zion, is dealing with time. One of my smaller ones. Yeah, very good. I don't know if that's what withstanding it means. Fine. What we're dealing here with is something. I'm not going to say deeper because the first thing is quite deep and very, very important. But it's basically the perspective of the internal emotional state of the person who's experiencing the Messiah. How they handle it. Of course they have to do what they have to do. That's not a question. That's the first step. You always have to do that. Instead of sitting and crying, do something. But the question now is how a person handles a Messiah. Reb Simcha Binim of Pshischa. I'm going to conclude with this because this is a long discussion that we're going to continue tomorrow. Reb Simcha Binim of Pshischa said the following. As me verliert Geld, hat man gar nicht verloren. Geld kommt and Geld geht. If you lose money, you lost nothing. Money comes and money goes. As me verliert de gesund, if somebody has a health challenge, that's a significant loss because part of their life, their body, has been compromised. He says even if not their soul and their mind, but it's a serious challenge. A health challenge is a serious challenge, at least for half of them. But then he said, so he said, verliert Geld, verliert man gar nicht. You lose. Verliert de gesund, verliert man halb. You lose half. As me verliert de Mut, verliert man alles. When you lose your courage, your resolve, your Mut, it's attitude. Mut is determination. Resilience. Yeah, very good. Your resilience. Mut, it's a Yiddish word. Mem vav tes. The Mut or the mit. The courage of life, he says, you lost everything. Because that, it's not a tangible thing, but it's the whole approach of the person. Your will, your
Grit.
Yes. Your grit, your the oomph of a person. It's not a tangible thing. Oh, money is tangible, health is also tangible. What did you lose here? But really you lost the engine, you lost the battery. Or to put it in the words that we're going to see is you lost the ability to be able to find God here. You lost the ability to be able to find truth here. To be able to find meaning here. To be able to find purpose here. And that becomes in a way the greatest tragedy because the person gets broken instead of being sublimated. As we will see in the continuation of the Maamar.
In the lowest places.
Yeah, to be able to find God there.
So that's the Oris and Shevat that everyone's asking about. It's the mut. It's not the money and the.
But I can't give that advice. That's what you're saying. Yeah, he's not going to be discussing if somebody has a financial issue, what do? They have to figure it out. I mean, to the best of their ability. But till they figure it out.
Because he simply buys him a chutz, so there's internal, and you explain
So
it.
given a Yiddish let Shalom Aleichem.
Yes.
Hat gesagt, der Eberste soll helfen. They tell me. He said, der Eberste soll helfen, find them was helfen. Soll helfen. Pleasure to have you.
One of the option of the Rebbes. Es gab ein Tauben Rebbes schon spät. Auf jüdischer Zoi. Sei gehabt nicht, was zu tun läuft. Jecha Woche Hashem was zu tun.
Very good. So you get?
You looked at the watch.
So you get? Der Segen hat nicht was zu tun, läuft er. Ich habe was zu tun. Very good. He doesn't stop. Yeah. It's a good question. The answer is, the literal interpretation is Dame ayin basam et tippa. The deeper, not you're nothing, you come from a tippa, which the deeper interpretation is, you should know, may ayin basam. Yeah. That on one level you come from ayin, and you should know that on another level you come from a tippa srucha, and all your problems come from the fact that you can't make peace between the two. So either you run into the ayin or you run into the tippa srucha, and if you'll understand that you come from ayin and you come from a tippa srucha, and both exist in your life, and there's acceptance of the ayin and the tippa srucha, there can be peace in the world, in your life. Verstehst? For the Balatanya.
And where's the din of cheshbon?
Say this with every page.
Reconciling is the din of cheshbon.
Yeah.
What's the in that context? What's the ayin?
The ayin is like we say yeshmei ayin is divine. We call it ayin simply because when it's not tangible, I say it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. You know, you'll take a little kid and put him into the most brilliant class in the world, and he'll say it was stupid and boring. Was it stupid and boring? It may have been the greatest ideas. In his world, it was stupid and boring. There was nothing there. You give him an ice cream that was interesting and very meaningful. You know what I mean? And some of us too. Some of us adults too. You put them in great places, it's nothing. You didn't give me anything. Why? Not because it's nothing, because I'm limited.
Why did you switch to it?
So with standing the Soyan, it's not about, of course you have to try to change the facts.
Oh, you said me b'chutz, like I said, if you're talking about the anxiety of the Messiah, then I understand.
No, but b'chutz is the
it's a way of
facts.
accepting.
B'chutz is the facts.
Okay, but you understand my question. I mean,
Yeah. So we'll continue. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Page Nun Gimel in the Maamar, 2 lines from the top. The second line from the top. Acha inyan hu. See, page Nun Gimel, second line from the top. Acha inyan hu. The truth being conveyed here was that essentially one can truly find infinity within the finite, and as long as they can work to remove the blockages and the concealments, the mashal, if unraveled, will bring you to the nimshal, meaning that the various layers of concealment and experiences of life, all the way down to the most minute experiences here in this world, essentially are channels to connect to infinity, even if they have been obscured heavily and intensely, as explained in the entire conversation with the Tzimtzum. And to explain all of this and the mechanism, we changed course to begin to explore the concept of nisyonis in life, challenges in life, obstacles that really test people sometimes in profound ways. And in the works of Chassidus, it's explained that it's the purpose, or it's at least one of the explanations of the purpose why the neshama came down here, which always needs an explanation, why a soul that is so lofty and so sublime and so divine and transcendent goes through such a metamorphosis, such a transformation, which we call the Yeridus HaNeshama, the descent. It's not a small gradual descent, it's a quantum leap. It's an enormous descent from one space into a completely different world. As he said, on two levels. Number one, even the light that it's capable of achieving in the body is infinitely inferior to the light it's capable of achieving and experiencing in the divine bosom, so to speak, in heaven. Because everything, all experiences of love and awe and spirituality, ultimately in this world, are obscured and they are much more coarse. So even the ruchnius here is much more coarse, it's much less fine. So you can't compare even the spirituality of the soul. But in addition to that, there's something even more drastic, that it enters into a world where everything is concealed. Even a little trickle of light you often don't see. Kedusha is concealed, God is concealed, the light of Hashem is concealed. One often has to toil very hard to discover that Or. So this Yerida needs a justification. What's the purpose of it? What's the purpose of this descent of a soul, which is the source of all the tension in life, goes back to that moment that the soul leaves its natural environment and enters into this new space. And one of the explanations is that this is all for the nisyonis, which it experiences only in this world, which means that there's something so powerful in the nisyon that it's worth for the soul to go through the transformation. We're not dealing here with a system trying to crush and torture chas v'shalom a soul. On the contrary, you're dealing here with a source of infinite love. So that means that there's something so powerful and positive that it's worth it for the soul to go through this yerida, this transformation. And the truth is,
why does every soul not get you? Every soul.
Well, every soul has its own journey, how it reaches its ultimate potential, no question. It has its own shlichus.
It's not the answer.
No.
The answer why, or this should really understand.
Understanding, yeah. And the truth is that in many ways it makes sense, because we see that nisyonis in life are so abundant and so, and they don't discriminate. They don't discriminate. You know, every person, you know, sometimes at face value you don't see it in other people, but you know, the moment you get to know people and you get to know their lives, you see every person has what they call a pekala, a suitcase that they carry, sometimes a few suitcases. And even if you know, the life of perfection, the life where everything is so smooth and beautiful and splendid, exists in fiction novels. It doesn't exist, very seldom exists in reality. And somebody who has such a, I still not, the only people I know that have perfect lives are the people I don't know. And the only people I know that have perfect marriages are the people I don't know. And the only people I know that are free from all of these obstacles are the people I don't know well. It seems almost like, I don't want to say essential to life, but so much part of people's lives, in one form or in another form. So this means that nisyonis are not some type of, you know, mistake. It happens to be my mazel, his mazel, her mazel, that mazel. Some curse that certain people have, and they're now looking for sgulas, how to get rid of it. But rather, it's an essential component of understanding the role of the soul in this world. It's a major component. And what that means is that every person will confront different nisyonis till Mashiach comes, when there's complete revelation. But knowing this is a comfort, that the soul came down to confront us. This is not a mistake. This is not because you're evil, because you did some big sin, because you're a horrible person, or because you were born in the wrong month, and your astrological signs have condemned you, have condemned you, or because of a previous Gilgul, or because your father or your mother, or your teacher, your community, or if you have just bad mazel that you had. Mazel literally means the constellations, bad constellations. Not that these factors have no influence. Of course, a lot of things have influence on people's lives. But ultimately, as he says, the purpose of the neshama coming into the body is to face down, to literally be able to look at nisyonos and face them down. But that itself needs explanation. What does this mean? What is this positivity? What is the growth that we're addressing here? So this is where he continues the next phase of the explanation. The explanation is the hine inyan hanisyonos hem halemus v'asteda. The common denominator of all nisyonos, of all challenges in life, is they are instruments of concealment. They conceal. And they bring in concealment to life. They create uncertainty. They create confusion. They conceal. Shemalimim umastidim al ha'emes. The common denominator of all of them is that they obscure, they eclipse, they cover up truth, emes. She'im ha'yedeyes emes k'may shehu. If a person would realize the truth as is, see the truth, lo haya bazen nisayon klal. What we call a nisayon wouldn't constitute such a challenge. Kim kol inyan hanisayon hu pnei shemayla mamastin al emes. What makes it a nisayon, what makes the challenge a difficult challenge, a test, and often a very deep obstacle, is because that is what it does. The nisayon eclipses the truth. It covers up emes. Vayidei zeh she'omed b'nisayon harei hu bo la'amitus hadavar. And therefore, the first yesod in a person facing a nisayon is having the ability to be able to arrive at the truth, to be able to touch its truth. Withstanding, omed b'nisayon means withstanding the nisayon. We'll see what that means. Allows the person to reach this truth. K'may b'nisayon d'Avram be'ur kazdem. If you take one of the earliest nisyonos in our history of the nisayon, the test of Avraham in Ur Kasdim, when he was in Ur Kasdim. So Chazal tell us, she'ishlichu oise b'kif sheneish. Nimrod cast him into the furnace because of his beliefs, his monotheistic belief. V'hu lo yada shelo yisaref. Avram was unaware that he will not be burnt. Shema yedei shelo yisaref lo yimasen nisayon klal. If he would have received the memo before, it would have been a very pleasant experience. Walk into a nice schwitz and eat all of the fruits that were available there in the garden. It would have been a wonderful experience. It wouldn't have been a test. It wouldn't have been a challenge that could shake up his entire identity and faith. He did not know this. For good reason, according to nature. Fire consumes, it burns, it destroys. That's what he thought. Amnam yadua. But now let's take it one step deeper. We know hateva begematria lekim. It's brought in Svarim. The Parshas brings Sefer Parshas of the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovera, and other Svarim. That elikim is the numerical value of the word hateva, nature. Hateva is hey, tes, vez, ayin. So ayin is 70, right? And hey is 5, so you have 75. Then you have tes and beis is 11. Tes is 9 and beis is 2. So it's 11. So 75 and 11 is together 86. That's the same gematria, the same numerical value like one of Hashem's names, the name that we have been exploring in this Maamar, which is Elikim. Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem. So Mem, let's go from the back. Mem is 40. Yud is 10, so that's 50. Hey is 5, so it's 55. Now you have another 36. Aleph, Lamed. Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30. So 1 and 30 and 5 and 10 and 40. So you have Aleph, Lamed is 31, plus 5, Hey is 36. The Yud brings you to 46, and now you have Mem, which is another 40. So 56, 66, 76, 86. So the name Elikim is the same gematria as the word Ateva. Somebody once came to me after a shir and said, I don't mean to embarrass anybody, but you really got your numbers off. I said, why? So he says, Elikim is 100 and chveisvos. When did you get 86? So I told him, I'm glad that you say Elikim, but the real name is not Elikim. The real name is with a hey, not with a kuf. So you're giving us extra 100, you're giving us extra 95, but you could reduce it a little bit. So Elikim is Begematria, says here, says that Teva Begematria Elikim, so the person got very confused. Elikim is much more. Of course, we write it as Elikim, but it's really Aleph Lamed Hey Yud. What's the connection to why is Elikim HaTeva? The answer we'll understand based on everything we have discussed about Elikim and Kalim and Tzimtzum and Meshalim and Alemus. Because Vahainu, Shekol HaHatboyes Sheba'il, all the Hatboyes in the world. Hatbois means like matbeya. The reason a matbeya, a coin is called a matbeya is because it's minted, it's tavua, it's submerged, like a stempel. Imprinted, right. And that's what teva means. Teva means like imprinted systems. These are the systems. There's the system of how water functions, and that's what all of chemistry tries to teach and tries to appreciate. The chemistry of every single every single existence, and how it functions, and how the combinations, what the results of the combination. So it's called kol hatboyes, all the hatboyes, all the imprints that the Rebbeinu Shalom imprinted, both in outer space and on our planet, the systems of the galaxies and the systems of the planets, and the teva of the sun and the teva of the moon and its orbits, and the teva of the Chassidus. There's the teva of every single nivra is called the hatba. Kol ha'atboyes sheba'olam. All the imprints in the world, zehurak, mehalavushim v'asterim d'shem Elokim, are essentially a manifestation of the garments and the layers and of concealment that are represented by the name Elokim. That's why Elokim is Ateva. Shayideza, as a result of Elokim, Naser riboy hayischalkos. There is so much diversity, and the Hagbala, and this finiteness. Every single creature has its orbit, its limits, its definitions, its limits, what it's capable of, what it's incapable of, its unique identity. Ha'esh yisroif, the nature of fire is to burn. Ha'mayim yichbe, the nature of water is to extinguish the flames. Shezet tivoy cham, here we're dealing with the nature is heat. Shezet tivoy kar, and here it's cold. Chuli, etc. And the etc. continues the infinite manifestations of every single, the teva of every single existence, whether in the world of daimim, which is the mineral world, the inanimate world, the world of vegetation, the animal kingdom, the human race, outside of the outer space, above the planet. Avol mitzad shem havaya shubchinas bilti gvul, but shem havaya yud kei vavke, which represents, it's the name that represents pure infinity. Ein shamchinas hagbala. There's no limit, finite, v'hischalkus, or diversity, the distinctions. Hischalkus is like the word machloikus means disputes, but here it's not about disputes. It is about divisions. That everything is different. The mayim, water, ve'esh, klal. All these divisions don't exist. V'yachalias shamayim lo yichba. In the world of Yudke Vavke, nothing is fixed in any particular way. So water may not extinguish, not necessarily, va'esh lo yisrif. And this is the pshat in the Gemara, says the famous story with Reb Chanina ben Doisa. Misha al-kamay misha amar l'shemen v'yadlik, yoyma l'chometz v'yadlik. The Gemara tells a story. Reb Chanina ben Doisa was very, very poor. And his daughter wanted to light Shabbos candles. There was no oil. She saw some vinegar. She thought it may be flammable. She put it in. She sees it's vinegar, and you can't light Shabbos candles with vinegar. Try lighting vinegar. She's weeping. So Reb Chanina ben Doisa says, my daughter, Biti, don't worry. Misha Amar l'shemen v'yadlik. Yoyma l'chometz v'yadlik. The same one who dictated, Amar, he said, to the oil, it should burn, can tell the vinegar to burn. What is this, a joke? Reb Chanina ben Doisa didn't know there's a difference between the role of oil in the world and the role of vinegar in the world. Wine is not made to be, don't put, you try putting your wine into your Hanukkah candles. You put a wick into wine, I don't know how much mazel you're going to have. That's what she was crying. But Reb Chanina, vinegar is a derivative of wine. When it becomes sour, he says, Mishama l'shemen v'yadlik, yema l'chometz v'yadlik. What Reb Chanina ben Doisa was addressing is the fact that Amar l'shemen v'yadlik. Amar is basara mamaris nivra ha'olam. Misha Amar, that's what the Balatanya explains. Misha Amar l'shemen v'yadlik. Shemen is based on certain sirufim, certain combinations of words. Just like Mayim is based on its sirufim. We spoke Mayim. Even in chemistry, we know that every molecule of water is made up, for example, of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. And the Hebrew letters of every word, the Amar, represent the letters that carry the divine energy that creates this particular nature on a spiritual level and then also on a physical level. And they're all connected to each other and they evolve from each other. So on the level of Amar, Misha Amar, Shemen has unique characteristics that allow it to be flammable or to serve as fuel, as oxygen to a flame. Chaim doesn't have it. Vinegar doesn't have it. Says Reb Chanina ben Doisa, that's on one on the level of Elikim. The way Havaya is channeled through Elikim, the way the teacher communicates his energy through the mashal, it obscures the energy. Now, fire is fire, water is water, vinegar is vinegar, oil is oil, an apple is an apple, and a peach is a peach. Everything has its gdorim, its definitions, and there's no way to go beyond that. But what's the emes? Chazal say that there were situations in history where fire and water didn't extinguish each other. We just learned about Barat, right? Eish mislakachas b'toich habarat. Rashi says neis b'toich neis. You had hailstones, and inside each hailstone there was a blazing fire. So besides the miracle of having hail or fire, that the mayim and eish should coexist and not extinguish each other, is very strange. Ukamayim Chazal say al pasuk. Ham shelo pachad imoy oyse shalom b'mroimov Michal sar shel mayim v'Gavriel sar shel eish v'ina mechavim zeza. Oyse shalom b'mroimov. He creates peace in his heights. That Michal is the source of water, the spiritual angel of water, and Gavriel is the spiritual angel of fire. They should be in a fight. Fire and water never get along. Either one wins or the other wins. They can't coexist. There's no shalom bias between fire and water. Nobody has ever achieved that great feat. Because if you have too much water, the fire will have to say goodbye to itself. And if you have a big fire, it will evaporate the water. And yet we say, Oyser Shalom b'miraymav. The Gemara says in Brachas, Haroya Gdeira b'chaloim yitzapa l'shalom. If somebody sees a pot in a dream, I don't know how many of you dream about pots. Not pots. Gdeira, not the other one. That I know people dream about. Haroya Gdeira b'chaloim, if you see a pot, a top. A top. Pot and top is the Zalba Oisius, by the way. A tough. Tes Aleph Pei with under the tzirufim. So if you see a top in a chalim, yitzapel l'shalom. When you see a pot in a dream, you should anticipate peace. Vasepis. So it's brought in Svarim, I think from the Chassam Sofer, even earlier. I once saw, because Mayim and Eish can't coexist. Who makes peace between them? A top. A Kedera makes peace between them. Try having them work together, it's not going to be possible. One of them will be destroyed. However, the pot is a unique type of arbitrator. The pot is a great shadchan. What does he do? He has the food in the pot. He puts the water there and cooks up the water, and the pot gets hot, and the fire under it could now coexist together with the water, and not only don't they obliterate each other, but they enhance each other. The water gets enhanced by the fire because it gets warmed up and it can cook the food. And the fire ultimately serves its purpose to be able to create fuel and energy for people to have food, to be able to eat, and to be able to live.
Water can only exist through a keli.
Right. Always in a keli, through a keli. There has to be a mechitza. And this is a very important idea in the world of Elikim. This is what we call boundaries. Sometimes you think you remove mechitzas, all types of mechitzas, and you create peace in the world. What do you need mechitzas? In Shul you have mechitzas. In relationships you need mechitzas. Who needs mechitzas? Why do we need walls? Why do we need partitions? Remove all the walls, remove all the boundaries, and the world will be as one. Imagine no walls, no boundaries, no partitions, nothing. Everybody is one. But the truth is that what that does is, it doesn't create peace. It creates much more disharmony. In the beginning, could look like it's so beautiful. Like we know in every marriage needs to, people have to come together. But if there's no boundaries, if two people decide we're completely one, everything is one and the same, and there's no respect for the individuality of the other, ultimately, the two will choke each other. And one will be obliterated. It will become too difficult. Because what happens is, Elohim creates differences. And you have to recognize those boundaries. You have to recognize and respect the individual distinctiveness. And if we make believe they don't exist, what often happens, even if in short term, it may seem very promising, but long term, it could become dangerous. It's mamish like taking away the pot and saying, we don't want a mechitza anymore. We want the fire and the water to make peace with each other. The problem is, for fire to be fire and water to be water, you have to recognize the distinctive qualities and be able to work with each one's nature. That's the product of Shem Elokim, which is a real shame that creates all of the distinctions in the world. But then we say there's Oisa Shalom B'Miraimov. What's Oisa Shalom B'Miraimov? That B'Miraimov, there's peace between fire and water, spiritual fire and water. Michal Sar Shalesh and Michal Sar Shamam Gabriel Sar Shalesh. Ule Pa'amim ha'esh tzoref v'samayim k'may be'Eliyahu. In Tanakh we see the story of Eliyahu Hanavi in Har HaKarmel. You know the story of Malachim, what is Perik Zayin, where Eliyahu Hanavi challenges the 400 prophets of the Baal to a religious duel, and basically they have to each offer an animal as sacrifice without fire, without having fire, and beseech their God to bring down a fire. And what happens is, they take 2 bulls, it's the Haftarah of Parshas Kisisa, and they offer it, and they're screaming and hollering and scraping their skin, and they're trying to get a fire, and Eliyahu Hanavi says, scream louder, maybe your God is sleeping, maybe your God is in the bathroom, maybe he's on vacation, maybe he took a nap, why don't you scream louder? And so helft nicht, there's no fire. And then Eliyahu Hanavi poured water on the altar, which naturally, even if there was a fire, wouldn't be able to take root, because it was full of water. And nonetheless, that's what he says, Hamayim ha'esh tzoref v'samayim. Despite the fact the fire descended and all the whole nation screamed, Hashem hu Elokim, and so forth. Now, we read all these stories. Everyone here, or many of us, or some of us, grew up with these stories. In Chumash, we learned about the hail and the fire, and sticks become snakes, and snakes become sticks, and water becomes blood, and blood becomes water, and frogs emerge, and you hit a frog, and you have more frog, etc. Many people, how do you understand this? How do we understand it? So it's cute magic tricks. It's like magic, more tricks, it's all tricks. Eliyahu Hanavi did another, and the Tanakh is filled with such tricks that don't stop. Some people more, some people less, especially Eliyahu Hanavi and Elisha, who even did double of Eliyahu Hanavi, and so on and so forth. But the truth is, how do we understand what is a miracle in Yiddishkeit? What does it mean, a miracle? Somebody once asked me in a shiur, he said, it's funny, he was here for a while, he was here a year or two. He said, it's funny, I never heard you tell a story of some miracle of the Baal Shem Tov. All I grew up was, they told me the Baal Shem Tov, his horses used to fly. That was the only thing I knew. There was all miracles. I never hear you tell us, just you speak about the Baal Shem Tov and you just don't tell miracle stories. Why not? So I told him, I don't know, I didn't have some machshava, why not? But the greatest miracle of the Baal Shem Tov was the Baal Shem Tov himself. Far greater than any miracle he did. The greatest miracle of the Baal Shem Tov is the fact that there was a person like the Baal Shem Tov that came into this world and became the person who he became and taught what he taught and did what he did all the way ad hayom hazeh. But the truth is, there's something more. The way we often understand miracles is very, very childish. It's like a cartoon, extremely primitive. And very often when people become older, and I hear this from a lot of people, they go by and they say, it's all fairy tales, isn't it? Are you supposed to believe any of this? It's one of the things that shakes up people, because it's like, okay, somebody told me, he asked his father, How do you know that God exists and God is real and Yiddishkeit is real? Father here, Monsey, a fine Hasidic Jew. So his father said, because I saw by my Rebbe, who lived in Monsey for many years, I saw miracles. So obviously he's real, because you can't just do miracles without it. So his son says, why don't I never saw from that person any miracles. I never saw anything that's a miracle. So he says, well, when I was younger, there were miracles. So the son said, when did it stop? He says, the day you were born. So he says, why? Why did it stop the day I was born? He says, because you're an apikoros. Because you're a heretic. So the day you were born, all the miracles stopped. So he told me that he told his father that, that any intelligent person who listens to the conversation understands that your whole faith is based on a hollow, shallow egg. It's like an egg without anything inside. Isn't it strange that the day I was born, all miracles stopped? And suddenly I'm not privy to any information that you're privy to, but I have to trust you about these miracles. So the father told him, you don't belong in my house. And that was the end of the conversation. So what happens is one has to be very careful and sensitive, because when we don't understand miracles and nature and the proper approach, so it's like, it's cute games, like people would tell their children at Eliyahu Hanavi. Somebody sent out a message before Pesach, that his father every year used to say that Eliyahu Hanavi comes after the Seder, in the middle of the night, and he drinks up the wine, but nobody could see, because it's a private thing, and that's why in the morning, the cup of Eliyahu was empty. So this boy, fine boy, 7 years old, decided he's going to stay up a whole Pesach night to be able to see Eliyahu Hanavi drink the cup. And he stayed up. And his mazel, the place where they used to keep the cup of Eliyahu, was in his room. So he didn't even have to go out of bed. He could be under the blanket, stay up. And indeed, around an hour or 2 hours after the Seder, he hears footsteps. Eliyahu Hanavi is about to come in. He's excited. Anyway, Papa comes in, Tati comes in, takes the cup, pours it out, cleans it up, and puts it back. And he says, he described the emotional letdown. The emotional letdown. And he says, my father meant well. He was trying to inculcate emunah in me. That Eliyahu Hanavi comes and he drinks. But he didn't realize, the moment you say something that's not true to a child, ultimately, they will often delegitimize everything else you said. I know a younger man also from a very fine person. And in 1969 in July, in August, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. 3 people landed on the moon in the famous first moon landing of 69. This was in the summer, I think July or August 69. And in the summer, so I think they started yeshiva right then or soon after. So he turned to his teacher and he said, how do we say in Kiddush Levana, Kashem shani roiket kenegdech ve'eni yachel lingoya bach. I dance in front of you and I can't touch you. The Chazal were writing something that is inconsistent with reality. Not only can you touch the moon, you could stand on the moon and even bring down earth from the moon and even etch an American flag into the moon. So the teacher turned to this 9-year-old boy and he said that this was a lie. The Goyim, and he used one more group, I'm not going to say the name, but the Goyim made a Yad Achas with another group, and Hollywood produced a mythical reality of going on the moon. It never happened. This is a lie. It never happened. That's what he said immediately with a straight face. So the boy, who's today a grown-up fellow, a grandfather with a family, said, you don't understand, at that moment, everything I learned till the age of 9, I defined in my mind as one big lie. Because I knew he was lying, and lying with a straight face. So I said, that means Yetzias Mitzrayim is a lie. Everything is a lie. In that moment, I was 9 years old, I was a baby. But it was all over for me. It was all over. It took him decades of inner turmoil to go back and have the courage to maybe revisit Judaism. So I told the person, the miracles in Torah are emes, they're true. But we often have a very childlike perspective, and then at some point, very often, people have to now negotiate between two realities. like my mature, developed reality, respect for science, respect for physics, respect for the laws of nature, and then all the stories that they taught me with the coloring books about the early sages or the later sages, for example, the Baal Shem Tov and his ilk, etc. Now, when we, however, understand reality from a deeper perspective, it falls into place. And what do I mean it falls into place? Teva is a very serious thing. Nature is not a game. That's why we say, Ein Semchel Ala Nes. And we all know that. And somebody who decides that nature doesn't exist and only miracles exist, first of all, they may be delusional, but also, it's not according to Torah. Ein Semchel Ala Nes. Right. And the Gemara even describes in Maseches Megillah and other places about miracles that happen. There was somebody who had a great miracle, his wife died, and he nursed, and it was a good thing or a bad thing. Okay, it's machlokes. But in any case, there's a famous Iran, Drasha Ches, who says, Hateva chaviv b'einei hamakram. The Teva has a special value in the eyes of God. You don't just, nature is also divine. But we have to now understand the oimek of this. All of nature is serious as a result of Shem Elokim. Because Shem Havaya Yud Kei Vav Kei is screened and filtered and obscured through the Kalim of Elokim, and what Elokim does is creates his Chalkus, it creates diversity, and it creates Hagbola, it creates finiteness. Just like the teacher cannot share his infinite wisdom, he has to tailor-make it to the capacity of the student and has to dress it up and only give a little trickle so the energy of infinity comes into every nivra in a very limited way, and that creates the structure of that particular existence. And that's how it operates, that's how it functions, and that's how it achieves its tafkid. And you have to respect those boundaries within yourself and within somebody else and within the world. That's very true. Then there's another concept. And it's also true. Reb Chanina ben Doisa tells his daughter, why are you taking oil so seriously? Whoever said that the oil could burn, he can also decide that the vinegar should be burning. What is Reb Chanina ben Doisa saying? Reb Chanina ben Doisa is saying you have to appreciate a deeper truth as well. And what's the deeper truth? This is the next step. All these stories is Lamayla min Teva. Which one is true? When you're talking about existence from the perspective of Havaya, from the perspective of the teacher, we now go back to the mashal again. When the student hears a metaphor, all he has is the metaphor. He doesn't have the original wisdom. But for the teacher, there's no concealment. Why is there no concealment? Because within the trickle of light, within the message that he gives to the student, the whole depth is there. So therefore, he never gets stuck in the rigidness of the message or in the tzimtzum of the message. The full infinity is there. From the student's perspective, it's a tzimtzum. So mitzat Shem Havaya, Oirein Soifa Bilti Balgvul, the Oirein Soif, which is infinite, where there's no limit of Teva, because that's what Bilti Balgvul means. Bilti Balgvul means it's limitless. Limitless means it doesn't have limitations, doesn't have a certain chemistry. It's not defined this way or this way. But the world runs according to the finite, rigid structures created by the channels of Elokim. Each existence according to the energy and the chemistry that Elokim represents. Every living organism has its brain, the capacity of its brains. It has its DNA structure, which basically makes up for the physiological structures of this particular existence, and its capabilities, its great virtues, its limitations. That's Shem Elokim. Just like the teacher who channels and limits the information and obscures it so that this student should be able to retain it according to his capacity. You give him everything, you give him the full infinite depth, and you're left with nobody. He'll just shut down. And you dress it up, and there's Mishalim, and he doesn't even see the full picture. When we look at the world, what do we see? We see a very fixed world that runs according to the laws of nature. It's mechanical, it's teva, you have to know this is this, This is this. This is how they combine. This is how they don't combine, etc. Hagam da havayu hu amahavim. Even though Yutke Vavke is the one who brings it into being. The Chol is Havus why they his galus koyach hapoyel. Everything that it comes into existence is through the revelation of the activating power, which is Yutke Vavke. Kamashir Kasuf, Havaya Malach, Havaya Malach, Havaya Malach, Kanal Ba'oirich, as explained above. Mikol Makim, that's true, but who are they? Havaya Kamashir Mena, they Shem Elikim. It's Havaya the way it comes through Elikim, meaning B'pchinas Helem Vehester, so it's eclipsed, it's concealed, Love B'pchinas Gvul, for who Inyan Gvul HaTeva. And these are the boundaries that we call Teva. There's an imprint. What's an imprint? These are your boundaries. The Yam has its boundaries, and the Yabosh has its boundaries. And if a person says, I'm an amphibious creature, and you decide to spend the rest of your life in the Atlantic Ocean without a boat, we know the results. But on the other hand, if the fish decides, I love the beach, not what is above, beyond the beach. I love the beach itself, meaning the sand on the beach. We know what happens to that fish. In other words, there is Hakbala. What's that Hakbala based on? Everything is Havaya. Everything is infinite. That's true. From the teacher's perspective, even the little limited information that he gives and the concealments, we said before, it's not a concealment. Why? Because he sees the whole infinity in that. So he's never encumbered by it. But from the student's perspective is, this is the little information I have. This is what I can maintain in order for me to retain my eye. Now, this is only a mashal, because again, the teacher doesn't create the student. But what happens if the information would create the parameters of the student? Right? That's what Elikim is. It doesn't only give a shear. Hashem doesn't only give a shear. The shear is what creates the world. Shear means measurement, size. Shear, size. That it's the divine energy that comes in a particular size. It comes packaged in a particular way. These are your borders. These are your boundaries. Physical boundaries, psychological boundaries, emotional boundaries. These are the boundaries. Every nivra has it. Water is water and fire is fire. Water extinguishes and fire burns.
What did the Panina goes to do that?
So why the Chanina ben Doisa? If I was Isaac Nish, the Chanina ben Doisa, yeah. Okay, I'm in it. Vihine. So Teva is very real. It's not a fake thing, the hidden Teva. It's not a fake thing, delusional. Teva is real. It's the system of Havaya being communicated through Elikim. Elikim is HaTeva. And that's the beauty. You see that the Gematria is not a Pestam in Elikim, HaTeva. HaTeva is Elikim. Elikim describes what Teva is. That's why it's the Gematria. What is Teva? Teva is Elikim. It's the way Shem Havaya is channeled. Just like you'll have sometimes, they were talking about the Nile River these weeks, the Nile River, right? So Rashi explains, and this is everybody who knows about the Nile knows, that the Nile flooded for thousands of years. Every August it floods because Egypt was parched. It's parched earth. There's no rain, almost no rain in Egypt. So the Nile, the Nilus, was it saved its civilization. And during the flood, at the end of the summer, they created canals, and the water would flow through these canals, and they would bring them to farms and fields, and homes and neighborhoods. This is how they had water to drink. This is how they could plant and produce and grow. This is how they could make boats and papyrus and reeds, etc. Their whole civilization was based on the Nile. That's why they turned the Nilus into a god. So you have a huge river. The Nile goes for 4,200 miles. It's probably the longest river in the world. So the Nile River, it's so big, it's so huge. If it would flood, what do you do with this water? It's overwhelming. But you create a ditch, and you mitzamtzim the water, you restrict the water, and a little trickle of water comes, and now it goes into your farm, and it gives you exactly what you need to be able to grow your crop. If the Nile would flood your field, that would be the end of the field. It's called a shitofin. It's a plague. But you're mitzamtzim it, so now your little farm can get the water it needs, not too much, not too little. I don't know if you know that it's just an interesting topic. I don't want to get much off subject. There's There's a famous book that recently came out. It's called Let There Be Water. Let There Be Water. Israel, over the last few decades, has done unbelievable things in terms of saving up water. Basically, they saved 50% of the water that they had by figuring out, it's a whole story, there was a particular Jew who figured it out. He tried for decades and they rejected him, but he ultimately prevailed. That the water that we use to water farms and fields, most of it goes to waste. Because you water a field, but most of the water is not needed. What if you can create pipes that bring the water to every tree, every root individually, so you save 50% of the water, and on the other hand, it also produces much better growth because it's tailor-made to it. So they got 50% more water. Israel has a struggle with water. And they're now teaching it to many other countries. South Africa recently had a drought, Cape Town. But Cape Town refused to get direction from Israel, of course, because apartheid. Okay, but that's a separate sugya. But what do you see from here? You take the mayim, right? You channel it. You have to limit it. And if you give me too much, I can't exist anymore. The earth drowns. Again, this is a mashal. But the mashal is a very important mashal. Shem Havaya is everything. It's infinity. There's no structures. In the world of no structure, Teva doesn't exist. Teva is imprint. It's rigid. This is my matbeya. This is your matbeya. And it's very important. One of the worst things you can do to a government is mint your own coins. Print your own dollars. Counterfeit money. This is a matbeya. This is the imprint. This is the seal. Tamar wanted a collateral from Yehuda. One of the things she wanted was chaysamcha. I want your seal, your matbeya, your imprint. This is the imprint. This is the way it's channeled. But again, in the mashal, we're always dealing with two separate things. There's the field and there's the water. And the field needs just enough water, not too much water. But what, and this is where you have to do a little mental gymnastics, and that is, what if the water didn't come to the field? The amount of water created the field. The field was a response. The very reality of the field was a response to the amount of water. The teacher is not giving a shear to the student. His shear is creating the identity of the student. Imagine, you created children, okay, through words, okay? And the type of words becomes the type of child you create. What would it look like? You'd be careful with your words. We don't think of this. How do we create children? So God made this whole biological miracle of how children are created. So people don't realize their influence over there because it seems like just, some physical procedure with a tipper, with a sperm and an egg, etc. From a spiritual perspective, imagine there's an energy that you're communicating, and that energy is creating the child, the soul of the child, the brain of the child, the physical reality of the child. But what type of child? The child is based on those words. What is conveyed in those words? So that's how we have to understand the nimshal. The divine energy creates the world. In other words, the tzimtzum and the helim, right? It's not just, it fits the teva. That's what creates the teva. And each nivra has its own tzimtzum that creates its teva. So that's what Elikim does. In that sense, teva is very real. And then you have Shem Havaya. And what's Shem Havaya? Shem Havaya is the source of Elikim. V'hinei Avraham loy choshav sheyisnaigim ban hagashalayla me'ateva. Avraham never thought that he is going to experience that which is beyond nature. Kiyim ban hagashal pi teva sheish seirav. Avraham realized that probably he will be killed. Umikol makom amad ben Isayan. Now he withstood a tremendous test. What was the test? To say yes to truth or to say no to truth. Avraham Avinu decided to withstand the test, sheloi liyas nifrad melekos, not to separate himself from truth, from godliness. Im shayoloi meniyas v'ikuvim g'dolim k'nimrid v'sayater shratzel l'serv. He had tremendous obstacles. The natural, easiest thing for him to do, the more comfortable thing would be, let go. Give up what you think, give up what you believe. You have so many challenges, you have so much adversity. Let go. Just surrender. They want to kill him. He doesn't. All of these concealments that he's experiencing are part of the reality of how the world runs. The world allows for a Nimrod to have power. That's what Teva does. The world allows for an adversary of Avram to have power. Why? Why? Because there's so many concealments. So a person could function completely on a level of concealment. Mikol makom loy nizaz ziz kol shu chas v'shalom. He did not budge even a drop. His inner dignity and faith could not be compromised and taken. He did not budge. V'amad neged kol meineu makif. He stood up against every obstacle. V'neged kol ha'leimas v'estadim and all the concealments. V'holach li'sadav b'kivshon ha'esh v'lo'eliyas nifrit chas v'shalom me'alakus klal u'klal. He decided he will not separate himself at all, even for a moment, klal u'klal, from godliness, and if he has to pay the ultimate price for that, he's going to pay the ultimate price for that. That was his decision. Why? Because truth was the most valuable thing to him. And therefore, he will not surrender to falsehood. He will not surrender to the Weltanschauung of Nimrod. What happens? He's saved. So how do you understand this? Do we understand this? Okay, it's a miracle, it happened. It says, V'hainu shayideze shamad b'nisayin, when he withstood the nisayin, heisir es levushe hateva. What happened was, he didn't worship, he didn't recognize as absolute the levushe hateva. He could remove them. By looking and staying with this nisayin, he removes the garments of nature, because they're really garments. V'heima al boshes v'astedim shebetzad shem alakim. These are all the garments and concealments that come from Elokim. So what he had experienced in reality was the Eir of Ein Sof, which is infinite. And mitzad the Eir Ein Sof, which is infinite, fire doesn't burn. Because it's not rigid in its limit. The canal, the Mashe Sof of the Alpiagbola, the Levushi. Fire burns based on the limits of Tev. But mitzad the Bligvul, the fire doesn't burn. Because if Sheba Vaya was expressed, there could still be fire, but it's not fixed. The usually the world runs Avaya through Elikim, which is an external ray of Avaya. It's the Nisyon of Avram, which allowed him to touch Havaya beyond Elikim. What does it mean to withstand the Nisayon? That he did not surrender to the concealment. In other words, he pierced through the concealment. So you can experience the Eirein Sof Shalamayla Mikvul Hateva, which is beyond the which is beyond the Gvul of Teva, the finite nature.
Why doesn't it burn as it does?
Well, it's not fixed by its nature. Like Belio Hanavi, where the fire can exist even with the water. The water doesn't extinguish the fire.
What is it?
You want to know what it looks like?
No, what's the characteristics? What does that mean that it's fire? I get the miracle, I just don't understand the whole thing.
It's like how the teacher sees the little ray of knowledge that he gives the student. In that he sees everything. So it's not any more limited. I once read an article from a Jew. His name is Professor Yaakov Brauer. He's a neuroscientist and a professor of neuroscience and neurology in McGill University in Montreal for many, many years. He's a chassid, a Baal Tshuva, I believe, from Boston. And he wrote an interesting article that I once read. And he wrote that his first lesson in Chassidus he got when he was 9 years old, even though it wasn't called Chassidus. It was called a cartoon. He and his friends would spend Sunday afternoon in the theaters watching cartoons. They were, Jewish kids in Montreal or wherever they were, from, I don't know, traditional background or secular background. And he would spend Sunday afternoons in the theater. And he said one cartoon remained imprinted in his psyche. And maybe some of you have seen it as well. There's a particular cartoon where there is a clever bird called the Roadrunner. And the Roadrunner is wise and clever and wily and sly and is being pursued by a particularly dumb coyote. And the coyote is always trying to catch the Roadrunner and eat it as a meal. But the Roadrunner is always outsmarting it, and that's what makes the cartoon exciting. But Dr. Brower says in one particular cartoon, the coyote is chasing the Roadrunner and about to get him. The Roadrunner sees that there's a cliff at the end of the mountain, so he hides behind a rock. The coyote, who's so passionate and enthusiastic and eager to catch the Roadrunner, is just focused on one thing: I'm going to get you. So he runs, and he doesn't see how the Roadrunner hid behind the rock and just continues to run, and of course, runs straight off the cliff. And is running and running and running and running and running and running and running in the cartoon. And at some point, realizes that the Hayela Deinenu, the Roadrunner is gone, completely gone. And he looks here and he looks there, and he looks back. And he looks back and the Roadrunner is like, hi. And suddenly he sees the distance from him and the Roadrunner, and that there's a cliff. And suddenly the realization comes to him that he is suspended in mid-air, and he looks down. And he looks down and he sees the distance, and he gives a screech, a scream, a huge holler and scream, and only then does he begin to fall. The cartoon was there to entertain children on Sunday afternoon in the 1940s or 50s in Montreal. But there is a profound message. The coyote doesn't begin to fall until it becomes aware of the fact that it's supposed to fall. The laws of gravity don't dictate its destiny until it doesn't realize that it's supposed to be subjected to the laws of gravity. As long as the coyote is unaware that I'm supposed to fall, because there's no way a coyote is flying in mid-air. I am not an eagle, and I'm not a hawk. As long as he is not aware that he is supposed to fall, he actually doesn't fall. The moment he becomes aware that this doesn't make sense, I can't be here, there's laws of gravity, I can't be here, I just jumped off a cliff, that's when he actually has to fall. Okay, think about this, and we'll explore it more.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.